Well, the time is just gone 8:40 a.m. as we continue on this Monday morning with our edition of News and Views right here on Asala Media. So wherever you are, whatever platform you're listening to us this morning, we welcome you to the show. I am Inayat Wadi standing in for Chuli Ali this morning. Now, economic hardship is the order of the day, and right across the entire globe and the African continent, people are battling and we are seeing people getting even more and more poor by the day. The level of hardship is unprecedented and it's actually horrific. And considering that, especially on a continent like Africa, where this is a continent that is so resource rich, it's actually unbelievable. And even when one looks at what is taking place in West Africa with the three countries, Burkina Faso, and we've seen a lot of late with regards to Ibrahim Traore, who speaks about Africa, the African continent, the resource, and how these resources have been exploited. And Nigeria is no different. This is an oil rich country. And yet we've seen protests taking place against economic hardship. Now, we've seen the President Bola Tinubu urging Nigerians to cease these protests against economic hardship. And to unpack all of this, we joined now by Abubakar Umar Kari, who is an associate professor at the University of Abuja in Nigeria. Professor Abubakar Umar, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Yes, shukran to you as well for coming on and talking to us this morning. Now, we've seen these protests in Nigeria, hardship protests against obviously economic hardship. And we've seen the leader, the president, calling for an end to these hardship protests. But let's just look at the justification, Professor, for this, because in my introduction, I alluded to the fact that the world and Africa also, at this point in time, people are experiencing extreme difficulty where even food insecurity has become a major threat.
Hello?
Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you very well. Yes.
Yes, did you hear my question?
Yeah, not very clearly. So I wouldn't mind if you could repeat the question, please.
Okay, Professor, the point I was making is looking at these protests that are taking place in Nigeria, and these are protests against economic hardship. Just from how justified are these protests, considering what people are experiencing on the ground through economic hardship, through poverty?
Oh, the protest is very, very popular among Nigerians who have convinced themselves that the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has not been fair to them. You mentioned economic problem. It is much more than that. There are several other associated problems. Some of them are social problems like the climate of insecurity that has enveloped most parts of the country, particularly in northern Nigeria, where some self-styled bandits and armed, violent, non-state actors are having a field day, killing people, and the government has not done much in terms of addressing that problem. But the major thing, I think, is the economy. Right from the very swearing-in ceremony of President Bola Tinubu, he made some very fundamental pronouncements, two of them, and which have had the effect of virtually bringing the economy down. And that is the abrupt withdraw subsidy of petroleum products. And petroleum is like the life well of Nigerian because it affects every aspect of life. And from that very minute, everything goes bananas in the country. Prices of goods and services skyrocketed dramatically, and government has not done anything in terms of trying to cushion the effects. And then the government also announced the floating of the naira, the national currency, uh, which is actually a euphemism for devaluation. And so within just few days, the value of the naira got devalued more than 1,000%. And this also resulted in very serious inflation. So, very long story short, these social and economic problems have made billions of Nigerians uh, to be destitute. By the last count, about 82 million Nigerians are living below the poverty line. Most of them do not have or cannot boast of 3 square meals a day. Uh, Many of them in the northern parts of the country have been chased out of their own towns and villages by these bandits. They cannot farm, they cannot head their cattle. The cattle have been rustled and taken over by the bandits. So that is why this protest is quite justifiable because Nigerians have to tell the government that enough is enough, that government must do something and must do something promptly and decisively.
Well, certainly, and also I think what is of concern is the when these protests, the violent nature of these protests, and this is of major concern. And sadly, people actually lose their lives, as we've seen already. A number of people have lost their lives. Yet we find that it takes a protest for the government to sit up to take notice. And we've also seen what the president has said, President Tinubu, telling the demonstrators to suspend any protest and to create room for dialogue. Now, it takes lives, it takes people, it takes destruction of property for the president to make a statement like this to create room for dialogue.
Yeah, it is quite unfortunate that the protests have been accompanied or associated with loss of lives. Uh, in Nigeria, historically or by antecedent, it is extremely difficult to have peaceful protest, particularly when the people are very angry, when the people are feeling so deprived and so shortchanged, and also the way and manner security agencies manage or handle the situation either escalated it or provoke resistance from the people. Yeah, dialogue should have been better. Dialogue is the best way out of addressing the problem. But the magnitude of the problem themselves, uh, the desperation among Nigerians, and the perceived uh, indifference of government is what has turned the protest to be violent. So we only hope that at the end of the day, the violence will cease, dialogue will ensure, and amicable solution will be found to the problem.
But also, I think what is important when we're talking about dialogue, and you mentioned the economic crisis, you mentioned the inflation, you mentioned the tumbling currency, the fuel subsidy that had ended, all of that at the end of the day. Now we see a lot of external interference, for want of a better term, or external advice being taken because we've heard about the World Bank, we've heard about the IMF saying that these measures were necessary to revive the economy. And at the same time, it's all in the interest of foreign investment coming into the country while people are suffering on the ground.
Exactly. We, uh, we and most Nigerians are quite concerned and even worried and unhappy that the Bola Tinubu administration appears to have surrendered the sovereignty of Nigeria to the neoliberal institution of the West, the Bretton Woods institution, IMF, World Bank. Their economic prescription, which the president appears to have accepted unquestionably or hook, line, and sinker, are precisely what have created the situation that we are now. These situations, these measures lack human face. They have only compounded the problem. They have brought about misery and destitution among Nigerians. And Nigerians are saying that no, you should attempt to find local African Nigerian solutions to this problem. You don't have to go to IMF and World Bank to be accepting their economic prescription, which over the years, since 1990s, have proved to be quite unhealthy. So I think the major problem is the economic framework or fulcrum of the Tinubu administration, which is tilted towards the West, tilted towards IMF and World Bank.
Yes, Professor. In fact, I think in South Africa, we share the same concern in terms of this new government of national unity, in terms of who this government has surrendered their allegiances to. And this seems to be a problem in Africa. And just before we let you go, just a quick comment in terms of what is actually taking place also in West Africa. When one looks at Burkina Faso, for example, when one looks at Ibrahim Traore and the statements that have come through, and he's expressed these very, very same concerns that Africa can have the solutions to its own problem and does not have to surrender its sovereignty, and also at the same time to find solutions, the African solutions that Africa demands.
Yes, I completely agree with Traore and uh, uh, this sentiment. We believe Africa, Nigeria in particular, is rich enough, is endowed enough with resources, with intellect, with the manpower, with the people to solve its own problems. We really do not need ideas and prescriptions from the West, particularly the so-called neoliberal economic ideas, because by and large, they have succeeded in pauperizing the people. So our political leaders should, as much as possible, try to harness and utilize the local ideas, our local knowledge, our local solutions to our own problems. This is the only way we can truly be independent. We cannot continue to be subservient to the West politically, economically, and even in terms of ideas. If the government continues to follow this path, this problem is not going to cease. Instability will continue to bedevil our country, our region. And probably that is why, as unfortunate as it is, the coup in Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, and Niger is popular with the masses of the people in West Africa, because the new military leaders have been bringing about new ideas. They are turning away from the West. They are exploring other ideas. So I completely subscribe. I totally subscribe to the idea that we should forget about the West. We must not surrender our sovereignty to the West. We must look for hopeful solutions to our social, political, and economic problems.
Well, Professor Abubakar Umar Kari, we thank you for taking time out this morning talking to us right here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah. Thank you so much for having me. Alhamdulillah.
Associate Professor at the University of Abuja, Nigeria, Professor Abubakar Umar Kari with us on Salam Media this morning. We're going to go for a quick break. We got Lisa Makawula on standby.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.